Hey there everybody, Joe here. Thanks for watching again. I'm going to start back in on my painting. And so now I want to add some colorful trees up in here with the sun striking through the top of it. So I think it would be really awesome if I could just capture the look of a lot of light really illuminating the tops of those trees so much that it makes kind of silhouettes of the trees that are down below it. And I want to put perspective so that you're looking up. I'll take the tree trunks and make them go closer to each other as they go up, kind of like when you know all the pictures you see when people point the camera up and you see all the trunks going toward the middle of the picture. I'm going to do that very subtly, not extreme, just slightly tilt these in so that it has a feeling of being tall trees. I want them to be real bright and dramatic, so I'm just going to make some orange leaves here. Okay, I'm going to put some red and yellow, and so the thing I have to think about is shifting the hue. There's a rule that nature follows. I call it the rule of shifting hues, where if light is not just bouncing off of something but shining through, then it shifts the hue toward yellow. And so the pattern I want it to follow is as it moves away from the light, it moves away from yellow on the spectrum. So that might just be from a yellow to an orange. If it's a red tree, it might be from an orange to a red. It's just moving toward or away from yellow, not necessarily being one or the other. I'm going to put some more yellow behind these guys now. I think it'll look good to have a higher layer of the real bright yellow up behind this darker orange, kind of like in here. Same thing in there. As long as it has a lot of color. You know, this is what I notice about making depth in things that are real bold colors, because I can't just use atmosphere here. I can't use my gray blues to make it look deep in this tree that's illuminated with all this warm color. So if it has a lot of color and isn't neutralized with white, then it looks deep. That's the way it goes, and that's due to that same rule of shifting hues. You know, we're just so accustomed to seeing those kinds of colors. That's how I approach painting everything, really, is trying to understand the kinds of colors that create the impression of something, so that I have some tools to work with when I want to create my own. That's the way I go about studying and learning from what I'm looking at in nature, is trying to gain the tools for creating what I see. I think, well, if I can recognize something at a glance, then there must be some kind of a specific pattern that's causing me to immediately perceive it as that. And so I just look for those patterns. I always just, I start with the assumption that there's a pattern to be found, and I just look until I find it. I think I could do some more of that orange down in here now. I'm going to make maybe a further back area right here. I'll start with yellow and white. See where it goes from there. See, when I do this bright yellow, it cuts out the shapes of some red leaves here, and so I always think it's a nice trick to use to go back and forth. You know, you make shapes by painting the shape itself, and you make shapes by painting the space in between the shapes. When I revolve back and forth, I usually like what comes out better. How about some green in there? This will be fun. I'm just going to grab my phthalo green right out of the can. I could use blue and yellow. It would just get the same result. Let's see what happens if I use brown. Brown's nice and dark. So the brown with the green, I think, will make that nice shadowy color that I need. Since I need to darken it and I need to mute it, it needs to be less green and less bright. Brown is a good option. So now down here I need a darker red and yellow. So I'm adding brown again. Just gonna mix the brown and the yellow, the red, and just start filling in some space down here, because I'm imagining forest that goes back and back, and we're coming down into the shadows. So all those orangey colors are dark coming down this way. Just thinking for a minute. You know, maybe it kind of comes down in zigzags, like this. then something like that. I need some shadow on that. And since there's all that color in there, I can do a pretty brown colored shadow. So if I just put this brown on this right side, it's a good start. Not a finished product. I want a nice dark shadow so that I have a nice bright light. It's easier to brighten a picture with lights than it is to darken a picture that's been painted too light. You know, so leaning toward dark colors on a picture can be a real good thing, as long as you've got the colors in balance. It gives somebody room to light the picture and get some really bright, pretty highlights, because you painted everything else dark enough that it doesn't go away when that bright light is on. You can make light coming from the opposite side of a thing by putting light on both edges. So this branch, we're looking up at that branch. I want light to be on both sides of it. So I'll just take this brush and put the brown right through the middle. So I'm going to put a real dark shadow here so that this looks like it's going over my head. You know, I'm really looking up at this one. That dark shadow makes that a downward facing edge. I want to try to really make this a cluster of green leaves coming forward. Might need to use black for that. Black and yellow make an excellent dark green. Blue and yellow do too. Let's put some black in there. I'm not going to leave that black pure. It's too black for this distance in this illuminated part of the picture, but I got to save it for other parts of the picture. But just mixing it into this, getting that nice dark green, I think will be a pretty effect over the top of that background. See, these leaves are all sheltered from the elements more than the others, so they're not changing quite as fast. That's my theory. That's what I'm saying for my little make-believe land here. Now here I'm just giving my imagination something to look at. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. Don't know what I'm doing here. But I'm just gonna make the shapes of little leaves and do colors that I know look like shadows, colors that I know look like translucent light with yellow on brown, and hope that it starts to look enough like something that I can get some ideas. All right, pine tree. Now if I were Bob Ross, I'd pull out the fan brush right now and just do it in 5 seconds. But I'm not Bob Ross, so I do things like drop my brush in the paint bucket. See here, I've just got my phthalo green, put a little bit of white in it, put black in it, get a color like this, something real sprucey. Put a tiny bit of yellow, and let's see what that does. So I'm going to put it in front of this shadow, but I am not going to try to match it to that shadow. I'm just going to start putting these little swoopy shapes everywhere. I imagine some pine needles sticking up. It's that long end of the brush that is my best friend when I'm trying to do this kind of stuff. Now, tree branches, you know, if you just get a tree as a whole to have the general direction, the general pattern of a tree, then little imperfections get ignored. You know, it's mostly in the overall pattern that makes it look like a tree. So as it's higher on the tree, the branches point more upward. But as it goes lower, the branches start hanging down a little bit more. Let me just put some big dark clumps of some thicker foliage on here. And then I'll just put little what do you call the pine needle? Those little cylinder shaped thingies of pine needles that come off the tree. So I'm grabbing more of my phthalo green, black, white, tiny bit of yellow mix. And I'm going to continue this tree. I'm going to get more black for this part right here. I think this is going to look good to drop it down into the shadow. I just think of a bunch of Y's going to the same center, you know. So as I'm trying to make the look of branches swooping down from this trunk, I just try to think of it as, you know, this shape that kind of swoops back and forth along a branch coming out this way. Let's put some nice dark colors in here. This is down in the shadow now here, so I'm going to probably put more stuff in front of this. so I'm not gonna sweat the details too much. And then I'll add more white to it and yellow to get my highlight color. And I don't think I need real bright highlights on a pine tree because all the needles, they create lots of shadows. I'll make a lighter green, but not a super light green. Let's see what it does. I'm gonna do a lot more yellow. Try doing yellow, see what that looks like. Yellow and white out on the ends of this. This is really gold sunset light, so maybe it'll bring out some yellows on this that I didn't think of. Oh, I do like those tiny little highlights. When it comes to this kind of landscape painting, color does so much more than the exact shape of a distant object like this, you know. I think we really rely on just color or value, darkness, lightness, things we're familiar with to distinguish what things are. I'm putting a little bit of black in there. Doing all kinds of stuff in here. And do a little more green. Wherever it goes from black to green to white, that's where it's going to look like it's coming out of the shadow and into the light. I wonder what it would look like if I just kind of get a little bit more. I see a good place for a highlight on this guy. All right, I'm just going to kind of have some fun and start painting over this mixing area. I want to flatten that out for one thing, but I want to start adding in all of my atmosphere color like this and start getting a feel for what my end picture might start to look like. Give myself something to look at here. It starts to look like something when you do this. You know, you do this enough, you start to see things. It's like staring at a wallpaper texture. I used to do that when I was just a little boy. Stare at the old wallpaper in our house, our old house on Sefner Street back in Marion, Ohio. I would see all kinds of imaginary shapes in the wallpaper. I still have a very active imagination. The dark still freaks me out, to be honest. You know, when your imagination is making things, they just feel so real, and it's just hard to get that nervous feeling out of your mind. But on the flip side, it's very fun for being creative to have an imagination that sees things in random shapes and you can build it into having the tools to build it into something. Feels real good. Well, thank you again for letting me show off for you in this video. I've had a lot of fun. This is part 2. I'm going to turn this into a bundle, a whole set that you can purchase when this is all finished. So I hope to see you in the next video, and please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That's a big help to me in my work. Hopefully I can show off for you again in the future, and we'll see you next time.